everybody. There is good news and there's bad news. The bad news is you're not going to get a regular Jib episode. The good news is we have another JIBJabs.
Hey!
And this one is a modified, edited version of a script I did for a previous podcast we were both involved with called the Free Thought Podcast, which was Seamus's podcast. So if you used to listen to that, you might have heard this before. But Seamus says he can't remember anything about it, so if you have, then maybe it's interesting. This is the JIBJabs. Here at the Jib,
Okay.
we
I don't know where that came from.
sometimes read about very interesting characters from history who don't fit our FBI, CIA mandate, but we don't think that should stop you from meeting them. Join us on our merry journey through space and time. Our first JIBJabs was about Lyndon LaRouche. It's going to be like that, is it? Our first JIBJabs is about Lyndon LaRouche, perennial US presidential candidate and radical leftist and far-right cult leader. Our second JIBJabs is about Juan Pujol Garcia, a Spanish poultry farmer and freelance World War II double agent. Our third JIBJabs was about the Corcoran Gang, a group of jail wardens in California hosting gladiator fights among their inmates, which is wilder than that sentence makes it sound if you want to watch it.
Yeah.
Our fourth JIBJabs is about Mordechai Vanunu, Israel's worst nightmare. Our fifth JIBJabs is about William James Clark, who led a heroic rescue operation, not as a member of the United States Army Special Forces, but definitely while wearing a green beret.
Yeah.
And today we're talking about Hong Xiuquan. One of the things I wanted to do with this podcast, and I thought it was impossible, but Seamus has allowed it to happen, was that I wanted to talk about things that, well, Seamus wants to talk about US law enforcement stories that maybe you're not familiar with. And I wanted to talk about CIA stuff that maybe you were not familiar with, but also the whole bunch of other stuff. And in my area of interest, it would be mostly concern France and England, who were doing very USA-like stuff before the USA to worry about. Meaning, the USA really only kicked off, after 1945. They were doing weird stuff before that. But before them, there was a British Empire and there's a French Empire. But also there was some other places that we don't talk about a lot. And one of those places is China. And today we're going to talk about one man whom the JIBJabs called Hong Xiuquan. Now, to put this in context, I'm going to be zooming in and out of the perspective area, so it won't always be about China. When something's happening in China, I'll zip across somebody else to give you a bit of context. That's how this thing is mapped out, all right? So we're going to start off in 1814. So the zoom-out global situation in 1814 is the War of Independence of Mexico, Venezuela, Chile, and Argentina in 1814. She Walks in Beauty was written by Lord Byron. The War of the Sixth Coalition against Napoleon, after which the House of Bourbon is restored under Louis XVIII, happened in this year. Also, a large vat full of beer owned by a London brewery burst, killing 8 people, and the Marquis de Sade died in a lunatic asylum.
That loss of beer is just a crime.
Beer, I know, the beer hit you. As you were going, I said that.
I mean, it's just polar water or something.
Yeah. In that same year, 1814, the situation in China was the ethnic Manchu Qing emperor banned Christianity in China generally, and especially anyone who proselytized to ethnic Han or ethnic Manchu Chinese. Right? So I guess if he wouldn't have banned it if it wasn't looking like a problem.
Right.
Now, to zoom in particular to our particular gentleman, who's called, I call him Hong Xiuquan, but he was born Hong Huoshu, the third and youngest son of a minority Hakka family in Canton, which they now call Guangzhou in Guangdong. And if you whack up the grey map there, that's China. Guangdong is the I guess Florida part of it down there. Macau and Hong Kong are basically part of Guangdong. It was the place that had the most international contact. So it was kind of a port, and it had all that full of foreigners kind of vibe, that the Chinese generally hate. Right?
Gotcha.
But that's where he was born, down there somewhere. Hong's family made financial sacrifices to get him an education, and he aced all his basic exams, and he came first in the local civil service exams. Now, the civil service in China is a whole thing that it's not in any other country, with the exception of Russia under Peter the Great. It's kind of like a machine. It's really, for many, it's the only vehicle for social advancement. So if you qualify for the Imperial Civil Service, you've got a job for life, and you might get a chance to make a better job of yourself,
Sweet.
Unfortunately, he fluffed the Imperial exams, and he had to go back to being a farmer. and the following year he served his village as a school teacher. In 1836, aged 22, he went to Guangzhou to take the imperial exams again, and while there he heard a Christian missionary and picked up some pamphlets about the Bible, but he didn't pay much attention to them, as you'll see later. He failed these exams for the second time, the same imperial exams, he failed them again. Do you remember this now?
No.
Okay. In 1837, he failed the imperial exams for the third time, and this caused him to take to the bed in a delirium. And during this delirium, he saw himself taken to heaven, where he met God and Jesus Christ. God and Jesus told him that he was the younger brother of Jesus and that he was chosen by God to establish a heavenly kingdom on earth. He was told to change his name to Xiuquan and kill all the demons.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. When he came out of the sickness, he gave up on the idea of imperial examinations and spent the next few years teaching in towns around his village. Now, I told you he's around. Where's? Show me the picture. I have to look at the picture myself because my eyes are screwed. My eyes are gone from the diabetes, so I have to very magnified for me. Here we go. Now, that's basically the look of China, right? But Guangdong. There we go. Now, what I'd like to see is China map 2, the blue one, the dark blue one. Please. That's it. Now, that is a map of population density of China. And that black line going through it, they call it the Hu line, because everything to the right of it is really where all the people in China live.
Right.
All the rest of it is just very sparsely populated, and also it has another problem, which you will see in slide number 3.
Ugh.
There you go. That's a relief map of China, right? So all the brown stuff is mountains, and the white stuff is kind of scrubland and desert and so on. So you see the green bits are really the only part where people live and where stuff gets done. So although China is big and has a massive population, they are corralled within the green zone there. And go back to the other one. Yeah, you can see why that's the way it is. But unfortunately, well, you'll see later on why that can also cause problems. You can go back to the grey one again now, because that's really that's the general look of China.
Yeah, with the grey one?
Yes, please, yeah. Okay. I can't even remember why I gave you the fourth one. Maybe it'll occur to me when I read the script. Okay. That's your basic map of China. That looks like, when you look at that China broken up into provinces, you'd imagine, well, there's a kind of but why wouldn't you? There's a general spread of people throughout that. It's all squished up into the bottom right of it, which is okay. Here we go. General China position from 1839 to 1842 was the first Opium War. The Britain was smuggling opium into China illegally. China did everything they could to stop it because it was destroying the country, as opium will. Opium is kind of destroying the Midwest of America now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, in the form of not just prescription drugs. What do you call that? Fentanyl and things like that.
Yep.
Yeah, they're fucking up the Midwest. China did everything to stop it because it was destroying the country. There was also a general feeling that Western values in general were destroying the country, and the movements of foreigners were tightly controlled, often being unable to travel beyond the port where they landed, which for many was going to be just Guangdong. Britain moved up with gunships. China backed down and was forced to sign humiliating treaties with war reparations, opening up some ports and handing over Hong Kong. As you can see down there on the very bottom right is Hong Kong, which is in Guangdong. Basically, that's the origin of the phrase gunboat diplomacy. That's where that word comes from. So when the British rolled up to China and said, we will fucking destroy you with these big guns unless you sign this. So why on earth would they ever trust Britain again with anything after being subject to that kind of bullshit? Anyway.
Well, I mean, most people, given history of Britain, I mean, would you trust them? I mean, especially during that area.
Move.
Yeah.
And remember now what they're doing. They're moving up gunships to force China to accept opium.
Yeah.
To accept heroin into their country. In 1843, Hong Xiuquan failed the imperial exams for the fourth, and Wikipedia assures me, the final time. While wallowing in his failure, you can zoom out to us as well so they can see our delightful faces as we ooh and ah at the information. Right. While wallowing in his failure, he started looking at the pamphlets he got in Guangzhou again and used them to interpret his delirious visions from before the war. He concluded that he was the literal brother of Christ who had been charged with divine quest to rid the world of demons. He also asked for 2 giant swords to be made, one for him and one for his cousin, and he called these swords demon killers. although I imagine they would have been just as effective against non-demons. And this is the point where, no, we don't usually have top 10s in the middle of JIBJabs, but I did one anyway. These are the top 10 Chinese, and Seamus doesn't have this in the text. These are the top 10 Chinese death tolls. Number 10, we have the Yellow River flood in 1938, which these are not by order or anything, these are just the top 10. The Yellow River flood in 1938 killed around 1 million people. The river was deliberately flooded by the Chinese army to slow down Japanese advancement in 1938. And at first, the Chinese blamed the flood on Japanese bombing, but later they were forced to admit that they had done that. It was effective. It worked. It slowed down the Japanese army because the whole thing was flooded. At 9, we have the Northern Chinese famine from 1876 to 1879, which killed around 10 million people, or 2 Irelands. It was partly caused by the El Nino weather cycle, which led to a drought and then crop failures, and then the Northern Chinese famine of 1876. Number 8, we have the China floods in 1931, which killed around 2 million people. It was caused by the melting of snow and ice from a particularly harsh winter. And if you remember our relief map, you'll see the problem, because the people all live in the plains, in the green bits. The mountains are all up here. So if you have a lot of snow and ice in a particularly harsh winter, you better have flood defenses. They did have flood defenses, they just didn't have enough. Number 7, the Great Chinese Famine from 1958 to 1962 killed around 50 million people, or as we call it, 10 Irelands. 10 times my country of people were just killed. The famine was mostly caused, like being honest, was mostly caused by a series of disastrous policies of Mao Zedong. In 1981, the Chinese Communist Party finally admitted, after years of prevarication about a program called the Great Leap Forward, that really laid down the foundations of modern China, so they found it difficult to say bad things about it. But they did admit it, that the famine was mainly due to the mistakes made during the Great Leap Forward. I mean, how much does it cost to industrialize your country? 50 million people, apparently, is the answer in China. But they did shift the country from agrarian to industrialization in that many years. So Stalin did something very similar. He had a 5-year plan where he switched Russia from being agrarian to industrial, and a lot of people died. So, but there's no point in lying about it. Like, the people died as a result of the policy, and they certainly didn't have to. The 6 says the collapse of the Ming dynasty and the rise of the Manchu in 1644 killed around 12 million people, mainly due to a series of famines and peasant rebellions. And the Manchu came into power in around 1644, and at the time of this thing, as I told you before, they were still in control in 1840s. Number 5, the Yellow River flood, a different one, in 1887 killed around 1 million people, and unlike the last one, which was caused by the Chinese army, this one was caused by heavy rain, which is really where you want your floods, I guess. Number 4, the Yellow Turban Rebellion in 185 is the year this happened, killed around 4 million people. It was caused by a Taoist peasant revolt, so I guess those people are not always chill and relaxed. It was caused by a Taoist peasant revolt against one of the Han dynasties and led directly to the Three Kingdoms period of Chinese history. Chinese history is fascinating. It's like Egyptian history. You do 2,000 years of Chinese history and you've just started. Right?
It's long.
Yeah.
A lot going
Egyptian
on.
history is also like that. Chinese history and Egyptian history are really the only 2 places that are like that. They're incredibly fascinating, and you get something different depending on which 1,000-year block you're looking at. Number 3, the Xiuquan famine of 1925 killed around 3 million people. It was caused by a combination of natural disasters and political instability as warlords struggled for control of the province. Number 2, the Tangshan earthquake in 1976 killed around 300,000 people, which is nothing in China, apparently. And apart from the loss of life, it resulted in a total loss of confidence in the ability of the Chinese Communist Party to predict earthquakes and organize emergency response. And Mao Zedong died 6 weeks later, and we're assured is an unconnected incident. And number 1 is the Anlushan Rebellion from 755 to 763, killed around 20 million people. It was a short-lived attempt by the Yan dynasty to take over from the Tang dynasty. And at the time, it was one of the worst, maybe the worst, depopulation the world has ever seen. When you think about it, 20 million people in 755, what's worse than that?
That's quite a bit, yeah.
I guess the population density would have a lot to do with how many people are there to die, but that's probably the worst depopulation the world had ever seen. That's my top 10 finishing. Now, this Han guy, who was looking back over his Christianity pamphlets that he'd put aside, in the interim he's had all these mad visions, right? Hong began his divine quest by destroying everything Buddhist in his house and then his community, and he started preaching his visions. His earliest converts were 2 of his cousins who had also failed the imperial exams, Feng Yushan and Hong Rengan.
Oh, wow.
Here is a poem written by Hong Xiuquan. right? This is called Poem on Executing the Evil and Preserving the Righteous. In my hand I wield the universe and the power to attack and kill. I slay the evil, preserve the righteous, and relieve the people's suffering. My eyes see through beyond the west to the north, the rivers, the mountains. My voice shakes the east, the south, the sun, and the moon. The glorious sword of authority was given by the Lord. Poems and books are evidences that praise Yahweh in front of him. Te Ping, meaning perfect peace, unifies the world of light. The domineering air will be joyous for myriads of millennia. And I'm assuming that rhymes in Chinese. Eventually, the locals got annoyed at having their statues destroyed and expelled the merry band from their jobs and homes. Right? That's very common for startup religions, I gather, that the people in the village they live kick them out. Happens to all of them. In 1844, Hong and Feng and some other cousins decided to split up to cover more ground and spread the word of Jesus and demon killing that would have to be done around China. After 5 months, Hong went home without Feng and wrote some more of his delightful pamphlets, including exhortations to worship the one true God. Anyway, he wrote more of his delightful pamphlets, including exhortations to worship the one true God. I don't know, all gods look the same to me. In 1847, Hong Xiuquan and his cousin Hong Rengan went to Guangzhou to study the Bible with Issachar Roberts, a name I can pronounce properly. Issachar Roberts, who was an American Baptist missionary. Roberts refused to baptize them, though, for reasons that are not entirely clear. Some sources say it's because Hong asked him for money, and Roberts himself said it's because Hong's followers were bent on making their burlesque religious pretensions serve their political purpose.
Okay.
He said this, yeah, I mean, again, all religions, right?
Yeah,
I mean, what was Jesus doing in Galilee? Only the same thing. What was Muhammad doing in Saudi Arabia? Only the same thing, right? It's a religion. Most religions seem to be inherently political in some level. He said this because Hong had said that the demons were not just the Buddhists, but the Qing dynasty, who happened to be in charge of China, and the ethnic Manchu, in particular, who were the dominant people at the time. During this time, he also worked on a heavily edited version of the Christian Bible called the Te Ping Bible. Later that year, Hong went looking for his cousin. When he found him, Feng had founded the God-worshipping society based on Hong's writings, what would come to be known as Te Ping Christianity, and was amassing followers. In other words, this guy's cousin actually started the religion.
Oh, that's handy.
Yeah. Now we're in 1848. In the general global sense, 1848 was the year of revolutions in Europe. Italy, France, Germany, Hungary, Denmark, and other countries experienced a lot of unrest. In my country, in Ireland, a lot of people were starving to death during this time, during what we called the Great Famine. In 1848, the God worshippers, as they were called, had 2,000 followers. Chinese their names for everything seem to be right on the nose, you know. Happy, happy fun time. These people are called the God worshippers. 2,000 followers. By 1850, they had 20,000. That's some fast-growing shit. That is Islam levels of religion growth we're talking about here. After some skirmishes with local forces, the Imperial Army attacked but were routed, maybe because they were taken by surprise. During these times, other members of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom claimed to be in direct contact with God and relayed messages, including Yang Xiuqing, who relayed messages from God, and Chao Gui, who relayed messages from Jesus.
Oh, okay.
They were like nominated. Now, this was a part of Chinese folk beliefs that people would be oracles and they could speak, gods could speak through them and so on. And this is an example of how Hong Xiuquan managed a neat trick of challenging existing local religions while also integrating them into a unique syncretic form of Christianity. You know, it was like a very Hegelian religion. Another example was when he exorcised a cave near Shangzhou of its god, represented by an idol which had been appeased but with local prayers and offerings. Hong went in, smashed the idol, and wrote a series of the crimes of the local god on the walls of the cave. The local god had been up to no good, and he wrote those crimes on the wall of that cave. Now, this is an example of the syncretism, because contemporary Christian orthodoxy, and I guess now even Christians would just say that pagan gods are not real.
Right.
But he went in and said pagan gods are bad and wrong. They're doing wrong things, which is a different vibe altogether from what Christianity would suggest. The problem isn't that the pagan gods are bad, it's that they don't exist, right?
But he's got to use it within the norms of his society to advance.
He doesn't have to.
Narrative. Yeah, but I mean, that's what he's trying to do, right?
That's what he's doing. And he did it very successfully.
Yeah.
And he also, his targeting of Manchu, by the way, I don't know if I've written about this. I'll tell you later on if I didn't. In 1850, the United States passed the Chinese Exclusion Act for the first and last time, specifically naming a particular ethnicity as banned from the Union. They had never done that before, and they've never done it since. They never said no Mexicans. They've never said that in a law. They've only said it quietly to themselves at rich man parties, right? Even though Jorge and Luis are fixing the garden at the same time. Specifically naming a particularly ethnicity as banned from the Union. The Qing Emperor was fine with this because he was also getting sick of all the Chinese people decamping to California to work. He wanted to keep them as cheap labor in his own place. In January 1851, Hong declared himself the king of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom. The Qing dynasty made a more organized attack, but the Taiping were again victorious and decapitated the ethnic Manchu commander of the army. The Taiping Rebellion was now in full swing with 2 million soldiers. Right? Like, this thing is ballooning like gangbusters. Now, the Manchu were the majority population, and the Qing dynasty was the people in charge of the country at the time. They were treating the Hakka minority like shit. So that's probably how he got so many people on board so fast, because a lot of people were very unhappy with how the country was being run anyway, and they saw these guys who seemed to have their shit together with a unified vision, which is always good, something they believed in for non-money reasons, which means you could kind of rely on them in a certain way, you know? Yeah. Sorry. By March 1853, after many battles, the Taiping managed to take Nanjing, what you might recognize as Nanking. Nanking was the site of one of the worst degradations of World War II, which I'm not going to get into, but it was not good. Hong made Nanjing his capital, and that city has seen some dark shit, as you are aware. He created a civil service for the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom and introduced reforms. Assets were held communally, opium and polygamy were outlawed, and laws were introduced to make women more equal to men, although the main upshot was that women could join the army. Hong and the other Heavenly Kingdom higher-ups kept concubines, so they weren't too much into the women's equality thing.
Right.
Ethnic Manchu males were killed, and ethnic Manchu women were forced to leave the city and then set on fire. Again, Nanjing has seen some pretty dark shit.
Yeah.
So yeah, but he's running the place like a separate country now. So what you have is a civil war. This place has its own civil service, its own army. Like, is it even China at that point? Or is it, in fact, as he claimed, the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom? Yang Xiuqan, who you will remember from the above, also claimed to have heavenly visions. He turned out to be a capable military commander as well as everything else. And Hong started getting nervous.
Yeah.
Can't
have that.
No, and in a sort of a Stalinist move, in 1856, Hong had Yang and his family murdered, which set off a chain of revenge murders, so things got messy at the top, as well as the bottom. Now, in a larger Chinese context, in 1855, a major bubonic plague epidemic started in Yunnan, China, which is on the border of Vietnam and Tibet, which is over in one of the quiet corners. It killed 5 million people in China and 10 million people in India. This pandemic kept rolling along until 1960, according to the WHO, when deaths were at 200 a year, which is 1960, 200 years, all right?
Yeah.
Bubonic plague is a very old school thing to die of. The Second Opium War was from 1856 to 1860. This time, Britain and France demanded that trade open up even more and wanted to fully legalize opium, and they wanted to legalize Christianity. China put up a defense, but lost again, partly because they were fighting a different war on a different front. The invading forces trashed entire cities, and China was forced into more humiliating defeats, losing more ports and paying more war reparations. Man, if I was in China right now, I wouldn't trust anyone who did not have some kind of Chinese background. Do not trust the white man. He will fuck you. No matter what he says, right?
That's a general rule for most things, I think, though. Never trust the white man. But,
I'm just telling you, the Chinese have plenty of reasons to laugh when the British come over and say, oh, we'll bring democratic reforms and stuff. Like, fuck off. We've seen your democratic reforms already, and 10 million people are dead. So now we're going to go back to Taiping. The Taiping Rebellion was the bloodiest civil war in world history. Some historians believe fatalities to be as high as 70 million. Wow. The established Qing government did win decisively. Some historians, like Jonathan Spence, say that a key reason for the Taiping's defeat was its overall inability to coordinate with other rebellions. Here are some other rebellions which are happening around the same time as the Taiping Rebellion that the Qing dynasty also had to deal with. There was the Nian Rebellion from 1853 to 1868, the Pan Thai Rebellion from 1855 to 1873, the Dungan Revolt from 1862 to 1877, the Red Turban Rebellion from 1854 to 1856, the Li Yongzhe and Lang Chaoding Rebellion in Sichuan in 1859, and the Small Sword Society uprising in Shanghai in 1850. And I guess the British invaders would also have to have dealt with these guys at the same time. But you can see what kind of a place China was during the 1800s. Rough, death around every corner, political instability, nobody knows who's in charge. And in the middle of this, you have Britain pushing opium on everyone.
Right.
So lots of the army, of the Taiping army, was made of ethnic Hakka Chinese who were traditionally peasants and were forced to settle on the worst land. Those Taiping who were not Hakka still came from the lowest classes. None were landlords, and any landlords they came across in their territory were executed. So Stalin did something like that as well. I think he called them in the kulaks, you know. Almost every citizen who had not fled the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom was given military training and conscripted into the army to fight against the Qing imperial forces. Over the course of the conflict, around 90% of the recruits to the Taiping side would be killed or defect to the Qing. The areas of rural China that changed hands were totally destroyed in a series of scorched earth operations. Famine, disease, and massacres, along with social disruption, led to a sharp decline in population, especially in the Yangtze Delta region, the Yellow River. The result was a shortage. Oh, that's why I put the other map. Put up the last.
Okay.
Here, that orange bit there is the Yangtze Delta region. I forgot why I put it up there. That's why I put it. Okay, put it back to us now. I know we're supposed to have interesting photos and so on, but I honestly couldn't think of any because it's so long ago. So I just ended up with a series of maps. The result was a shortage of labor supply. Imagine China with a shortage of labor. Just picture how bad things were. We're running low on people in China. Labor became relatively more valuable than land for a while in China. In every area which they captured, the Taiping immediately exterminated the entire Manchu population. After capturing Nanjing, Taiping forces killed about 40,000 Manchu civilians. On the 27th of October 1853, and we have a date for this, they crossed the Yellow River, the Yangtze, and murdered 10,000 Manchus. They just killed every Manchu they came across because they are demons. God told them to kill them. It doesn't matter. There's no excuse. There's no anything. They just have to die.
Okay then.
Yeah. Ultimately, the Taiping Rebellion inspired Sun Yat-sen, who overthrew the Qing dynasty during the Xinhai Revolution in 1911 that led to the Republic of China, also based in Nanjing. And it also inspired some surviving Taiping veterans who ended up joining the Chinese Communist Party. And the Chinese Communist Party characterized the rebellion as a proto-communist uprising. And there's a very good reason for doing that because it was driven by peasants and they executed any rich people. Now, what they were actually doing was they were executing Manchu. But as it turns out, the Manchu had concentrated the wealth, so it's kind of the same thing. It's like in America, if I say something like diabetes is concentrated in African American populations, like a lot of that is linked to poverty.
Right.
So it looks like a racial thing, but it turns out to be something else. We're going to talk about. We're going to end our presentation with a discussion of Hong. After many battles, Hong Xiuquan. I'm hesitating because I want to make sure I pronounce it correctly. After many battles, I could be racist, all right? But I'm going to pronounce the things correctly if I can. That's the rule, okay? I'm going to honor these people and also judge them as a unit. After many battles and many twists and turns that I'm not going to get into, the Taiping tried to take Shanghai. But the Qing government army, with assistance from Western officers from countries that were ostensibly neutral, managed to resist. In 1864, the Qing forces made it to Nanjing and besieged it to the point that they were running low on food. Nanjing was. Hong told his followers to eat manna from heaven, but this turned out to be also low on the ground in Nanjing. Mm-hmm. Hong himself ate some weeds and died on the 1st of June, 1864.
Ooh, he ate the wrong kind of weed or what?
We don't know, but it's certainly possible. But starving people everywhere under siege eventually start eating weeds. It's a common thing that happens. It happened in Ireland. People started eating weeds because you can't eat. Your body is not designed to extract nutrition from plants like that, not like grass and weeds and so on. We can eat cabbage, I guess. Yeah. Cabbage is all right. You can do that, but they didn't have that. His body was buried in the former Ming Imperial Palace and was later exhumed to verify his death and then cremated in a Rasputin-like series of events. Hong's ashes were later blasted out of a cannon in order to ensure that his remains have no resting place as eternal punishment for the uprising. By this time, the Qing had reasserted control over most of the Taiping areas, but it was not until August 1871 that the last Taiping army of the Taiping army was completely wiped out by government forces. And that is the story of Hong Xiuquan.
Cool.
That is my presentation today, and that is our JIBJabs. Do you have any questions or suggestions or thoughts, Seamus?
No, I honestly do not remember us even doing this. I remember the gunboat diplomacy being discussed because I know that was,
Yeah, gun diplomacy was
yeah.
invented by the British in China during that time to push opium on China. Disgusting.
That's the only thing I really remember about that, So
all this. Oh, I guess I was going to say the CIA never did anything like that, but they kind of did, didn't they?
Yeah, well, yeah.
Well, they did to their own country, so that's all right.
Yeah.
The British did it to a different country, pushing drugs on China. The CIA never went to China and pushed drugs on them. Put it that way.
Not that we know of yet. So
not that we know. It's only a matter of time before another Gary pops up, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's it. That's my show. Any comments?
No. Well, I'm sure you'll be doing a CIA episode next, though, right? That's the plan.
It's possible. Yeah.
It's possible. Okay.
Anything's possible.
So.
They have that or another one.
Okay. Cool.
Do you have anything in the tank, or are we flying blind for 2 weeks?
I mean, if you need me to throw something out, I'm sure I could. So we'll figure that out.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens. That's our show, folks. Thank you for listening, and I welcome the opportunity to talk about things that we in the Western world may not be familiar with. I would like to also do more stuff about Africa. We've done one episode about Africa already, and I'd like to do more. So we'll see how that works. And until 2 weeks, I guess, good luck.
See you guys. Thanks. Bye.